what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to episode 1192, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you so much for listening to the show, for watching, however you are taking in Talking Buffalo. Truly appreciate you. Today's show is presented by the law offices of William Mattar. Heard of the car? Call William Mattar, 444-4444. Call William Mattar today to get the compensation that you deserve. All right, folks, this is our Tuesday podcast, recording this on Monday, Thanksgiving week here. We're cooking, man. What's going on? Chris Ostrander, a good friend of the show, good friend of mine, podcaster, blogger. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just the holidays are coming up too fast here. They're coming up in the rear view.
Ain't it? You know, you're right, man. It feels like we were talking, it's the beginning of October. Now I blink my eyes and it's like literally Thanksgiving's in a couple days. Do you got Thanksgiving plans? Like, are things set in stone? Do you know what you're doing yet?
Yeah, we got to, juggle a couple houses between my wife's family and my family. So that makes it's probably one of my least favorite holidays, just because like we don't spend enough time with anyone really. So It just feels like it's super stressful. Just trying to go from one house to another, make sure everyone's appeased. Yeah. So, but other than that, we'll, get some food in us and watch some football. So
some pretty big games actually on Thursday during the day. Green Bay, Detroit, KC, Dallas, which is going to be a big game now for the AFC and for the Buffalo Bills specifically. Yeah, we got some people coming. It's going to be smaller than normal. Things have been screwed up with my family this year. My wife's father has been, he broke his leg. He's 83 years old, and he's been in a rehab facility, which is not fun, to say the least. So anyway, we're going to have some dinner here, and then we're actually going to go there, bring some turkey and hang out. That's where I'll be watching that game. Anyway, all right, let's get into, because I don't want this to be a particularly long episode. We're going to talk Sabres. We're going to talk Bills. We'll get to the Bills in just a few minutes. I haven't really had an opportunity. So much is going on with the Bills. Most of it not great recently, but I haven't had a chance to talk about the Sabres much. So I kind of want to do that with you today. I reached out to you actually a couple of weeks ago. You're a busy dude, so I got to kind of pre-plan these with you when I could get you on. I'll tell you what, here's where I want to start with the Sabres today. And I can't believe I'm doing this right now, but the play of Matthias Samuelsson is borderline blowing me away. Like I don't know how to call it a transformation, because he was pretty good at one point. I mean, he did get a long-term contract relatively early, and then he just became, you know how Joe Brady's just blamed for everything with the Bills? Sometimes it's his fault, sometimes it's not. Well, that kind of feels like the last year and a half or so with Samuelsson. Like everything felt his fault. A lot of it deserved. I remember you and I having conversations on this show just, Deanna last season over the summer about him potentially being bought out, me losing my shit irrationally like I always do, where Kevin Adams said it wasn't even a consideration and borderline laughed at fans who suggested that it was. I'm like, what? And here we are a quarter of the way through the season. And Chris, has he been arguably one of the best players on this team? Like one of the most consistently good players on a very streaky Buffalo Sabres team right now. Tell me about Samuelsson. What happened? What's going on with him?
Yeah, remarkable turnaround. Remarkable. I mean, he was, and you mentioned that contract he got early in his career. He was playing good hockey then, and he was mostly paired with Dahlin. They combined well, and it looked like they had something with, Dahlin being a first overall pick, but it looked like they had something with both of them, right? And then Samuelsson just couldn't stay healthy. And when he was in the lineup, he was hobbled. He wasn't good. And it's pretty crazy because he wasn't good for, at least 2 seasons. Last year, he was really average, I thought, if not bad at times. And then on top of it, he got a lot of flack for the Tage Thompson hit, the lack of response. He was,
sure,
of the guys on the ice, probably the most prepared to go address it. And then he stood idly by. But I would say like the last 2 years in particular, his play had dipped, I think. And I'm not sure there was anyone around who would have been, still pounding the table for the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think I don't think he had too many fans left, if any. And so the fact that he's come around this year and has just been super steady, super reliable. I feel like to my eye at least, his physical game has ramped up tenfold. And again, I think that's probably a part and parcel of the injuries that he was dealing with, that he wasn't necessarily able to engage physically as much as you might otherwise want to. But he's been playing much nastier this year. I remember being in a game last year, watching him on the crease, not really clear a player. After the whistle, not bother clearing anyone. I was like, man, he just doesn't play like a prick. Like, you'd want a guy like him too. And that was what, you hear this about Owen Power too, but like, Samuelsson was drafted as a stay-at-home physical defender. That should be in his profile, and it wasn't always there. And it's there this year, though. And, the goals have been nice, too. The goals are a bonus.
He's got 5 of them.
He's never been an offensive dynamo, but quite frankly, I think, Dahlin has had some inconsistency issues this year. Samuelsson's probably been their best defenseman so far.
That's wild. On a team with Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power, another number 1 overall pick, and Byram, the contract, the 4th overall pick, and the big trade for Kesselring. Obviously, injuries are a factor too. Of course, not his fault. But we're talking Mattias Samuelsson as the best defenseman, arguably, at least anyway, on this team. And this isn't a small sample size anymore. Like I said, we're a quarter of the way, a little more than a quarter of the way through the season. I'm looking at his numbers right now, and I'm blown away. He's got 5 goals, 11 points. He's playing 21 and a half minutes a night, and +9 for whatever that's worth. I kind of feel like, though, Chris, like let's say Cole Bishop, like different, and because just Cole Bishop's younger, but it's like he almost got rode out of town by Bills fans, okay? And in that case, it was, he's got to grow more, and he has. And the light bulb clicked. I mean, Jordan Poyer obviously getting on the field. It certainly feels like Taylor. I don't know if it's more Jordan Poyer getting on the field or Taylor Rapp getting off of it. In part because of the injury, the knee he was playing with, which we didn't know at the time. But whatever reason, the light bulb went off. When it comes to Samuelsson, it's like, it's not a sticking in your ass like fans, look at you, you were dumb. Because I feel like the criticism was very warranted with him. Not just for his play, but like you talked about, the lack of him, and I thought you used the perfect terminology, him being a prick. Like, that was gone. The Tage Thompson thing's not no small deal. That was a big deal. And there were other scrums where it just felt like he wasn't interested in being involved in. Do you feel like, I don't know, sometimes with the player, it could just be something big or maybe something small where a light bulb just goes off and it kind of transforms you a little bit, because he looks nothing like the player that we saw last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, it absolutely could have just been something within the developmental track, within his growth as a player, that finally something clicked. I'll even think back to Dahlin. There was a time there when Ralph Kruger was here, there was plenty of people suggesting that Dahlin should be traded, or that the Sabres should entertain the idea of trading him, because he wasn't playing well. He was very inconsistent. He was certainly being exploited defensively. That was a big issue that I think a lot of people have had. And once Ralph Kruger left, Don Granato realized that, don't try to turn a guy into something that he's not. And he found his confidence, he found his footing, and he also found that prick gene. He started playing like he's kind of an asshole on the ice at times. He's kind of sneaky with it. And, he really blossomed even further as a player when he found himself. And so maybe that's part of what's going on with Samuelsson. I just think he's healthy. I think he's been so injured, so banged up since he signed that contract. I feel like he's had something going on. He's breaking his foot in prospect camp. He's getting knee injuries. He just never could stay healthy for a while there. And so it's really refreshing to see him playing free, playing healthy, and now he's really contributing at both ends of the ice, which has been you used to call him streaky. I think that's a good way to put it. It's been very, very pivotal to when they've been successful, to their success.
Streaky, I feel like, really defines his hockey team as a whole right now. Like, suddenly they've won 4 of their last 5. They're back to 9-9-4 on the season. They're out of the basement in the East. When you look at the standings, as we record this on Monday anyway, they're just 3 points out of a wild card. Now, plenty of teams in front of them, but still 3 points out of a wild card. Hell, they're just 5 points out of being in first place right now in the Atlantic. But conversely, they're also just 2 points from being dead last in the entire conference. It's so wild with this team right now. So I guess this is kind of a two-part question. So when the Sabres went on that 4-game road trip and things were just, they weren't playing well, and the injuries just were ridiculously piling up. Not even injuries that's underselling it. Illnesses too, like things that weren't hockey injuries have really hurt this team early on. But anyway, I remember I think I said on the show, I certainly said it to a couple people that I hang out with, that I don't bet often. Like I don't use FanDuel or DraftKings and stuff, but I was highly considering making a bet as the Sabres went on their 4-game road trip. I said, I bet you they don't get a single point on this 4-game road swing. I wanted to know what the odds were, and they didn't through the first 3 games. And then they're down 4-1 at Detroit, a good team. I'm like, yep, that was easy money. In fact, I was at Rock and Roll Heaven watching in 80s band. I actually remember that. And then next thing I look, they're tied, and then they win the game in overtime. So you start to get really high on this team. They come back to beat Edmonton. What was your mindset like, though, that Calgary game? And we'll talk about them bouncing back since then. But that Calgary game last Wednesday, team stinks. They're at the bottom of the league, back-to-back, tied going into the third period. Calgary's on back-to-back games, and they actually looked like the team with juice and energy in the third period, where the Sabres looked flat and tired and dead. What were your thoughts? Let's start there. Like when you're watching that game and you're just seeing them implode against the Calgary Flames, it's like you build up some momentum and bam, there it goes.
It's so tough. I think, trying to look at it through the lens of 82 games, you're trying to say like, okay, it's just one game, can they keep some positive momentum going?
Right.
But my thought process at that time was more connected to the start of that road trip. And that road, they had Jason Zucker's bedridden. He's not eating solid food for like a week and a half. Benson's out. Norris is still out. Both of those guys have been out for several weeks at the time. And then Dahlin's taking leave of absence, a much-deserved leave of absence, mind you. But
sure.
He's away from the team as well. So now you're missing your best player on top of, at that time, it was 4 of their top, I would call it their top 9, their top 3 lines. They had four absentees. So that's significant for any team, right? I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. And so they were really behind the 8 ball as it was. But my worry was that they hadn't been consistent enough up to that point. They go on that road trip and they looked horrible, right? They just have a couple of bad games. Speaking of betting, I made a couple bucks betting the spread in those games because 1.5 as the default spread on DraftKings was easy to hit. Yeah. But so my thought process in that Calgary game was like, I think they might be cooked, right? At least they had a couple guys back, but you lose to a team like that. It's not a good team. It's their backup goalie. Everyone else is rolling over them. And then you couple that with even the Blues game from a couple weeks back, and you just look at it and say, like, it's not a complete team. Obviously, they have some injuries, which are problematic, but it just seems like there's too many holes. The power play isn't trustworthy. Their goaltending is way too hot and cold. And, you just don't know what team you're going to get every night. And then they go and put 9 goals up on Chicago, who's playing good hockey. They're having a nice enough season. Despite, they have some shortcomings of their own, but you get 9 goals on Chicago and you put 4 up on Carolina and you shut them down the way you did. It's so Jekyll and Hyde that I don't know what to make of them. I don't know to say like, oh, like maybe they can push for a playoff spot, or are they just, is it fool's gold? It's so difficult. And, the last thing I would add is, I love that Lindy's 5 website. I think it's a really nice tool. I don't know if you've checked it out, but I know Jeremy talks about it on the radio. Like looking at it that way, before the Calgary game, I gamed it out. Like they let you toggle like what if, like what if they win in overtime, what if they lose, whatever. And I gamed it out like beating Calgary, and then I think within this current stretch going like 3-1-1. So I had them losing to Carolina, but you lose a game in regulation, you lose a game in OT. But if they won their next 4 of the other games, that's a really good stretch of hockey. 4-1-1 would be a breath of fresh air in these parts, I think. and they still would have been like 3 points off their pace to hit 95 points, which is kind of the benchmark for playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I keep thinking about too, is again, within the scope of 82 games, is they have kept themselves afloat. They're still alive, and the standings bear that out, right? As you mentioned, Pat, 3 points, but they realistically need like 2 5-2-1 stretches, so within a 15 game span, they got to go win 10 or 12, and they've got to really stack some points up to really start to look like a serious contender, instead of one where they're in this murky middle where, and the East is a mess too, granted, but they win a few games and it's like, oh, they're 3 points out. Look at this. And then they lose 3, and then they're back down in last. So it's just so tough to put your thumb on like what this team is. And honestly, it makes it hard to talk about too, because like you'll go one week saying like, hey, like look how great Tage Thompson's playing. The power play was, average or whatever. They got some good goaltending, and then the next week they lose 4 straight, and you're like, oh, well, I look like an asshole for talking about how great they are. So
yeah, I mean, look, you look at Alex Tucker. There's been a lot of criticism. I've even heard a little, is he kind of sort of checked out chatter with the contract and everything? And you look at the stat sheet today, and he's got 21 points in 22 games. You know what I mean? So would you say, and you're right, and I'm hesitant to say this too, because you and I could talk 2 weeks from now, and the Sabres might be 6 points clear in last place in the conference again. But for the time being anyway, you feel like that third period of that Detroit road game saved the season for now, because they were winless in 8 of their 9 games in the third period of that game, headed towards 9 out of 10. They come back, they win. Not only do they get a point, but they win the game. And now if you count that game, they've gotten 8 points in the last 5 games. So 8 out of a possible 10. It kind of feels like maybe, just maybe, if the Sabres are in a playoff race in February and into March, you could look back potentially at that Detroit game, because they're down 4-1, Chris. Let's say they lose that game 6-2 or something like that. Who knows what their mindset is? Who knows if they beat Edmonton or Carolina? They don't, maybe they have that energy and that juice. Kind of feel like that's been the most important period of the season for the Sabres for me. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think it shares some similarities even to early in the year, where like they went and beat Ottawa 8-3 or 8-4, whatever that Ottawa game was, but they were 0-3 up to that point. They scored 2 goals in 3 games. They were just getting run out of the building, and it was like, oh geez, like is this going to be that kind of season? And that Ottawa game kind of quieted some people down, settled things down, and they were able to find their footing a little bit. Yeah, so I think the Red Wings game could be similarly important to them, because to your point, yeah, they could have gone into that Edmonton game really down on their luck and pissed that one away, and then all of a sudden you're on a 12 game skid or whatever. It's bad. It gets bad fast. So yeah, I think certainly in the short term that Red Wings game looks like a wake up call. And whatever it was that set them off in that third period and in overtime has carried through, and they've been able to, Calgary game aside, they've been able to look competent, and they're getting healthier, which is helpful. And don't know what the deal is with the goaltending yet, but at the very least, you're now only missing Norris and Danforth, if I'm not mistaken, and
Kulik,
and Kesselring, but and Danforth's not quite as important to them as Norris would be. So, some positive signs for sure.
Who's impressed you most on this team so far this season? Besides, like I said, we've talked about Samuelsson, but when you look at the body of work with this team right now, when you look at this roster, who do you look at and you come away really impressed with how they've looked this season?
Got to say Josh Doan for sure. He's been terrific. And for a guy who, that trade was kind of weird to look at right off the hop in terms of the return. And, Kesselring's been probably banged up this whole time. He got in some games, but I don't know if he's been healthy at all. And so it's, you can't really judge him yet. I think he's played like one game with Power, and the game they played together, they were great. So go figure. that he gets hurt that game. But, Doan being a guy who split time in the AHL, he was definitely like more of a bottom six guy there in Utah, but he's blossomed and he's really taken his opportunity to run with it. So he's been great. Unfortunately, Zach Benson's been hurt, but he was, in my opinion, their best forward. When he came back from that first spell, that the puck to the face, speaking of weird injuries, he comes back from that and having to go to the hospital. He was terrific. You could tell they were a different team with him in the lineup. And then he went down with that lower body injury right in that before that road trip that we just talked about. And they did not have the same identity. And I think those two guys, the Doan and Benson, those two, they're kind of like little shit stir twerps out there. They don't take a shift off. And, Doan in particular has got a little finish to his game, which is great. It would be nice to see Benson start to find the net here, because he's been so good defensively. He's been great driving play. He's just got to put some pucks in the net. So those two guys, I think, outside of Matthias Samuelsson, been the guys I've been most impressed with.
There's not necessarily an order, but I think if there's three pretty remarkable things about the Sabres right now, and again, I'm not getting too high on them. At the end of the day, they're still 9-9-4, you know what I mean? And they're closer to being at the bottom than they are of being in the playoffs, not by much. But anyway, the three things, one of them we discussed with Samuelsson, that's kind of a remarkable turnaround. The other thing, based on what you just said about Doan, like you trade JJ Peterka, and if you would have told me that Kesselring would have no effect on this team so far this season, and that's not because of his play, it's because of the injuries, but you're not lamenting the trade at all because Doan has been every bit as good for Buffalo as Peterka has been for Utah. Kesselring suddenly feels like the bonus. I'm going to say throw him, but he's the bonus. Like if Kesselring becomes what we think he can be when healthy, holy shit, this becomes a really good trade for the Buffalo Sabres, and that's because of Doan. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, which you've kind of hit on, is, man, to be 9-9-4 with Josh Norris playing 2 periods this year and Benson being out as long as he's been, and Kulik, who has a non-hockey blood clot that really sucks, and other injury, Kesselring, and among other players as well. It's kind of, I don't know, man. It's kind of pleasantly surprising to me that this team is actually where they're at right now. It doesn't feel like the typical year-to-year, oh my God, I hate the Sabres, this team just sucks. It feels like they're kind of been borderline to this point impressive when you factor in all the things, the injuries and stuff that have went on with this team. We haven't really gotten a great look at what this team potentially could be at full strength right now,
Yeah, we haven't seen their intended roster together.
Right.
They have not had every player in place as they planned as of this point in time. And now with Kulik out, I mean, who knows how long he's going to be out for. From my memory, at least, anytime I remember a hockey player in particular with a blood clot issue, it's been months. It's like a 3-4 month thing. So maybe we see him in February, March, if all goes well. But so he's going to be out long term. And I forgot to mention him when I just mentioned, Norris and Danforth. But yeah, it's encouraging. It's encouraging that they've been able to be competitive. And some of these oddball injuries aside, they may have 1 or 2 more wins if they were playing at full strength. There was a point there where, and I'm forgetting the exact string of games. I could probably pull it up, but they were a one-line team, and the one line that was going was Ostlund, Roseanne, and I think Quinn at the time.
Yeah.
Tage Thompson's line was pretty quiet, and the fourth line wasn't giving them anything, and it was like the Roseanne line was the only one that was a threat. And so it might have been even like that Utah road game, or the home game even, but they're getting healthy, and so now you can at least get a better sense of what this roster is. And now it comes down to maybe some of the questions that were asked in the offseason. Can you get league average goaltending? Can you get quality special teams? Can you replace Peterka's 5-on-5 scoring? You get back to some of the bigger questions as you looked as like a season preview, if you will, instead of saying, how can they survive this next stretch because of XYZ injury or illness or whatever? So there are some encouraging signs. I'm still very hesitant to get too far ahead of it, just because every time I do, they lose 3 straight.
I was gonna say, man, I could feel like a real idiot if I go back maybe 17 days from now and replay this episode with you, where the Sabres may ultimately be. But I mean, you hit on these guys too. I think it's promising that Rosen and Oslin, what they've done. Oslin's still up. Rosen is back down for now, but I feel like he played well enough that if you bring him back up, you have confidence that he could step in and do a job. And I don't love that he got sent down, but I also understand for the time being why it makes sense. And then Jack Quinn, look, man, he's not consistent, and that could be frustrating, but Sunday, you could see promise with him, and he's flashing more, a lot more certainly than he did last year. This was another contract that I was really pissed off that they extended him. But I don't know, he's looked pretty good, hasn't he? Or at least flashy.
He has games. Yeah, I think with him, like, he'll go a few games where he's pretty quiet. He's not sharp on the puck, and he just, he's a bit of a passenger. But then he'll have games like Sunday where he's just electric, and you see the talent that made him a first-round pick. See the talent got him 50 goals in the OHL. And so it's really hard to put kind of like the rest of the team, it's hard to put your finger on, like, what is Jack Quinn to this team? Is he a burgeoning top 6 talent who can play two ways, or is he a streaky, average contributor who, in a perfect world, you'd upgrade on? I lean more to the latter, just because I think, and this is probably something we've even talked about in previous episodes, like, you're missing another high-end elite talent. And that would probably be a hole where you shift Jack Quinn elsewhere, whether it's another team or somewhere else on the roster, and you bring in another high-end wing talent or center that pushes that talent down the lineup, and then you're not asking as much of Quinn. So that's another conversation for another day. But, Quinn, I think what you're seeing with Quinn in particular is how important he can be to them when he's on, because he gives them a third score. Like, he really helps make that third line a true scoring threat.
I like that point too. Maybe, there comes a day where you don't have necessarily a role for him, and you got some of these young guys, Hellenius. Maybe these guys come up, and maybe Quinn's not part of your long-term future. But to your point, him playing well, him flashing, showing potential, that could make him more attractive as part of a package in a trade with another team to get a high-end top 6 type of player in a package. So that's a good point I never really thought of. Last Sabres thing here, we've kind of hinted at, or you've talked about a little bit with the goaltending. 9 wins the Sabres have this year. UPL's got 3 of them. Ellis has 3 of them. Lyon has 3 of them. All 3 goalies each have 3 wins, and it's like they're hot and they're cold. They're in and they're out. UPL was getting run out of town not long ago, and now he's been in net the last 2 games. Looked good on Sunday, and Lyon's kind of on the outside looking in. He hasn't started in like 10 games or something like that. Quite the role reversal early on. How long do you think this team could and should roll with 3 goalies? I want to say that it's really hurt them, but has it? Has it, like these guys taking these long stretches? It's hard to get in a flow, but I haven't seen yet awful goaltending because these guys are just so inactive. I'm intrigued by how this plays out. How ultimately does this play out?
I don't know what the long-term option is. This is different than when they had the 3 goalie monster a few years ago, and it would have been Anderson, Comrie, Luukkonen, if I'm not mistaken. And, Anderson can only play every week, once a week, right? Like, they had to keep him rested.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Comrie had missed some time with injury anyway. And so it was a lot easier. It was more frustrating from a roster management perspective, but at least it was a little bit easier for them to manage the games. It is not an elegant situation. It's really messy. You mentioned Lyon. I mean, he hasn't finished a game since November 8th. And it was a 6-3 loss to Carolina. I'm sorry. He started a couple days later, but he only played 6 minutes. There was that Colorado game, and he got pulled early. So he has not played a full game in 20 almost 20 days. We're coming up on 20 days here in terms of his last complete start. A little bit shorter, obviously, since he saw the net, but it gets so messy because he has that current stretch, right? Like it's been 2 weeks basically since he's played. But then if you go look at Luukkonen, he just went through almost the same thing. He barely played, and he was hurt too, of course, but he was very clearly, at least for a week or two, the third goalie on this roster, and then he came back in, and now and Ellis played that first game. He played pretty well against Detroit. He was on the bench for a bit, so that's my concern, is that not only do you not give any of the goalies an opportunity to get into kind of like a flow state, but you're also risking having 3 cold goalies instead of just like one warm one.
Right.
That's my worry. What it does seem, though, to me, is that Ruff is just going to rotate whoever's hottest. And so Ellis got 3 straight starts because he played well in the first one. And then Luukkonen played well, got the start again on the heels of his victory. So maybe that's just the approach. Is Luukkonen won against Chicago on Friday after after Ellis had a tough outing. He got the net the next night or 2 nights later, whatever, and that's just what they're going to do. And so it'll be Lions' turn whenever it is that they decide to give UPL a rest, or if he doesn't play well, then Lyon gets his shot. I would imagine they have to get him in soon, just because he hasn't played a lot. But that does read like what they're going to do largely is like, my if I'm Lindy Ruff, my starting goalie, quote unquote, is going to be whoever's playing best at the moment. Yeah. And I'm just gonna rotate my one as I see fit. I worry about how that's going to work out in the long term, but knowing that they can't waive Ellis, knowing that, they could waive UPL, but they're not going to do that. And I think it would be a long shot for him to get traded right now. And I can't imagine that they would want to move off Lyon after just signing him. So I think this is going to be that's going to be what they're going to do for the foreseeable future.
I agree. Let's take a quick break, come back. I want to spend our last handful of minutes getting some of your thoughts on the struggling Buffalo Bills. Chris Ostrander with me. All right, so the Bills right now, and it's just, I almost can't believe it, but they are the 7th seed in the AFC as we record this going into this Thanksgiving week. And they play at Pittsburgh on Sunday, which, in my opinion, and I think it should be everybody's opinion, is a very big game. You could argue this is a huge game for the Bills on Sunday. I feel like if you win, you're well on your way to getting, I consider right now, I'm thinking of 10 wins. That's where I'm at with the Buffalo Bills for this season. I've given up on the AFC East. I think that's dead. Right now, it's get to 10 wins, and I feel like 10 wins with who they beat in, especially if they beat Pittsburgh too this week, that assures you of getting into the wild card. Win that game, you're well on your way. You lose that game, you have some problems ahead of you right now, Chris. The Bills are favored by anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5, depending on where you look in this game. I don't feel like they should be favorites, to be honest with you, and certainly not by more than a field goal. That is just my opinion. Let me ask you a broad question right now. Like, what's your take? What's your interpretation of this football team and where they're at right now and why they're struggling? Is why they're making things a lot more difficult than it feels like this year was set up to be?
I just think so much of it for me right now comes down, it's a bad offense. The scheme doesn't seem to be working. Their personnel certainly is not working. Now, do we know how long Spencer Brown's going to be out for? Is there word on that yet?
No word as of today. We'll probably find that out on Wednesday. From what I understand, he's definitely going to be missing multiple games.
Yeah. So now you're missing a key piece of the offensive line.
Yeah.
Who obviously had a bad outing, right, against Houston. They got embarrassed. So, my first concern is, like, how are they going to block TJ Watt? Like, first question right off the hop, right? Like, but just looking at the offense, I think it has become a cascading effect where the wide receiver pass catching personnel is not very good. They're not separating. So now Josh Allen is losing his faith and trust in whether it be the route tree, the play calling, what have you. That's where I think you're starting to see him freelance a bit, playing a little bit of that hero ball that would get him in trouble in his early in his career. And then again, and the spiral effect of it is like teams know, like, we can still put 8 in the box because they're either going to run that stupid ass bubble screen that I hate, but they're going to run patterns within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage that are all underneath routes, or they're going to try to run it with James Cook. So like they're daring the Bills to go deep because they can't do it, or they won't do it, one of the two. And so now, like, you start to lose the run game in some of these outings if they don't get out ahead early. And so all of a sudden you go from like, okay, their best non-Josh Allen weapon and James Cook can be neutralized if the team's defense is strong enough. The team can continue to sell out against the run because they're going to dare this passing offense to beat them. And then all of that combined then trickles down to Allen being, I think it was Cover One pointed out, like, it's easier to spy him because the run game and the pass game are more predictable. Yeah. So I just think there's this cascade of issues that ends up putting so much more pressure on Allen to be the driver. And without Kincaid and without any real talent on the outside, it's just like hoping that it goes well on a given week. And they exploit bad teams, right? Like Carolina, they whooped on them. But then you go up against a team with any modicum of defensive wherewithal, and they get beat.
You know, watching film, and I want to be clear, man, I'm not like Cover One. They find concepts and things I can never dream of even looking for. You know what I mean? They're real legitimate film people. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, same. I just look for certain things, kind of almost generalized. And the one thing that just sticks out, Chris, you ain't got to be Eric Turner or Anthony Prohaska or those guys to see that, like, when the Bills run play action on first down, those Houston linebackers, they don't even consider biting on it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's so many routes where it looks like almost the DBs are running the routes alongside. They're running it for the receivers. There was a lot of like a direct spy on Josh, and it was just so easy to spy him in that Houston game, especially going in. It's so frustrating. I don't know what they could change. Here's what I would say about the Bills. A very simple statement, but one that is really true right now. That might be the biggest problem with this team is they're just straight up not a good road team. They are not a good road team. Like, all these issues that we talk about, for the most part, have come on the road. I mean, they've played Kansas City and Baltimore at home. You know what I mean? They played Tampa at home. Those are 3 good teams, 3 good quarterbacks. They beat them all. They go on the road and they stink. They lost to Atlanta. Who's got 3 wins this season. And I don't care that Penix got hurt. It don't matter, him or Kirk Cousins. That's not a very good team. They're a 3-win team. They lost to them. They lost to Miami, who's 4-7. You got no business losing to Miami. They should never have lost that game. And then Houston's got an incredible defense. But you know what? They were 5-5. They're not 9-1 going into that game.
And their backup quarterback plays.
Yeah, a backup quarterback, dude, and they do nothing good on offense, Houston. They got a great player in Nico Collins, but they don't throw the ball well. They don't run the ball well. They do nothing on offense. And you lost that game. That's 3 road losses this year where the Bills have played like utter shit. And then I went back and I looked. I never realized it, but this year, last year, and in 2023, the last 2.5 seasons or so, the Bills are on 11-11 on the road since 2023. I never really thought about it that way. They just straight up, I don't know, they got them ready or what it is, but man, this team just does not play good football on the road. And that's a problem. What do you think realistically, because the trade deadline's come and gone, you're not really adding anybody. I might add Shaq Lawson, apparently, from what we're reading on Monday. But I don't know if you're the Bills, Chris. What do you do? What do you think you could do realistically? I got one idea in mind, and again, it's a simple but effective one. But what do you do to turn the season around? Because it might feel lost right now in ways, but it's absolutely not lost. The AFC is wide open. Like, what do you get back to? What do you do?
I don't know if I have a good answer. I mean, because so much of it, what I feel like how can they adjust their scheme and play calling on offense to be more of a dangerous team? And we hear all this nice stuff about everybody eats, and obviously Brady and McDermott, I think, are in unison on wanting to have a really good run game. But if they are going up against a team that has any ability to stop the run early on, and they can keep Cook bottled up, I think it makes for a really long afternoon or evening for the Bills. And so that means that they have to be way, way more effective in the passing game. And so maybe that's changes a bit when Kincaid comes back, and they can use Kincaid as a bit more of that X factor in the passing game. Maybe they get Keon Coleman back on the lineup, but like, he doesn't, are they going to throw 50-50 balls all day? Like, what does he do for them? Like, Allen's not good at back shoulder fades, by the way. Like, if he was better at throwing a back shoulder fade, maybe Coleman might, be a little bit more effective. But like, I feel like he misses those a lot. I've seen people talking about Brandon Cooks because he got really, like, give me a break. Like, I think the personnel that they have right now it's so average. And so my thought is, like, I mean, I don't think they need to throw in the towel on the season, just given how injured they are and stuff. But like, maybe you just accept your fate, play out the string, get in the playoffs, see what happens in the playoffs. Maybe you're healthier, whatever. But I mean, the trade deadline's gone. Like, I don't know. I tweeted out a few weeks ago, like, Brandon Beane has 6 phone numbers when they re-signed Jordan Phillips, and now Shaq Lawson's in town. Like, he really does have 6 phone numbers in his phone, but like, I don't know. Like, is Gabe Davis going to turn back into the 13-second Gabe Davis? I don't think so.
Man, it's. I got a thought on Shaq. I'll get to that in a second. To your point, I think there's 2 things. And number one, they can't control one of them because the guy's just got to be healthy and available and out there. But you said Delta Kincaid. And a common denominator in their 2 worst offensive performances, 2 of their 3 anyway, Atlanta and Houston, Dalton Kincaid missed those games. He is very important to this offense. Him not being out there is big. He's not Amon St. Brown. He's not Jamar Chase, so I'm not being stupid and saying something like that. But he's as important to this pass offense in that way as some of these star players on other teams are to theirs. So when he's out, it is absolutely a big loss. But for me, again, really simple-minded by just saying the Bills aren't a good road team. The other thing I would say is what they can realistically do to turn the season around, quite simply, is stop turning the fucking ball over as much as they are. Last year's team, and I knew this wasn't going to be completely sustainable, they were a plus 25 and plus minus last year. They were the best in the entire NFL. The Bills had 8 giveaways in 17 games last season. And the Bills' 3 losses, their last 3 losses on the road to 3 pretty mediocre teams, they've given the ball away 8 times in those 3 games, dude. They gave the ball away 3 times against Houston in a 1-score loss. They had 3 turnovers in their loss against Miami. They had 2 ugly Josh Allen interceptions on that Monday Night Football loss to Atlanta. Stop turning the goddamn ball over, man. You give yourself a better chance by not turning the ball over. It would be nice if the defense got some takeaways, and they're not doing that. But if you're the offense, you could at least control not turning the ball over. So turnovers are killing the Bills this year in these kind of games that they have no business losing, but they lose because you look and they've lost a turnover battle in all of them. Joe from Queens hates to admit it, but that's a factor in these. As far as Shaq Lawson, yeah, I mean, come on. Who knows? People are going to listen to this tomorrow. Maybe he signs, maybe he doesn't, but I get it. I heard Sal Capaccio say on the radio that at this point of the year, you want guys that are familiar that could get, pick up the system quick. And that's very sensible what Sal said. I'm sick of it, man. There's got to be somebody from another team who can pick up the system. You're a defensive end, go after the quarterback. Don't crash inside like Joey Bosa does 8 times a game. I mean, come on. It can't be that difficult that you can't go outside the organization. There's got to be somebody. Jack Lawson has played 14 snaps since the end of the 2023 season, and the Bills are going to sign him?
I know. Yeah, that's I get Sal's point. I understand that, and obviously that's what the Bills lean on, right? When they re-sign these guys, they know. But yeah, what juice is he going to go make a play for you? I mean, he will now, Raj. Like he'll go force a pump, right? But you go sign these guys who have been practice squad guys or worse for a couple seasons, and are we really expecting to see them go out on a Sunday and make a play for him? I mean, Gabe Davis has been okay, right? Sure. But and I understand he's come back from a pretty serious injury, but same thing. At some point you got to try to find someone with some juice, right? And so at least I don't know, Hardman's not a great example, but he got banged up too. But at least he's got a real high end trait, right? He's a burner. I don't know if some of these guys that they've circled back on have any high-end traits. You know what I mean? When's Balen Spector getting back on the field? You know what I mean?
Oh, God. Don't say that shit, man. I think the most frustrating thing, Chris, is this just feels like the season was handed to the Bills. It was ready to be handed to the Bills on a silver platter to really take advantage. You got the Chiefs, your nemesis. Can't beat them in January. They got 5 losses. They had a huge, if they would have lost that game against the Colts, their season's almost on life support. They played Dallas this week. Anyway, they got 5 losses already. Who knows if they even make the playoffs? They probably do, but 5 losses are in danger. The Ravens are down. You beat them. They got 5 losses. The Bills had a very easy schedule. The Bills are 7-4. Man, you just go even if you lose one of the 3. Miami's got your number. They had to win sooner or later. They were due, whatever. Beat Houston, beat Atlanta, you're 9-2 right now. You know what I mean? It was there. That easy schedule, it was there. Highmark Stadium last season, everything felt like it was handed to the Bills to go their way. And again, there's just not a dominant AFC team at all. I know the Patriots have the best record, but let's see that in January. You know what I mean? In the playoffs with a young second-year quarterback against a good team. I kind of feel like May's got to kind of go through that Josh Allen thing where Josh Allen is 2019, the first year in the playoffs. He's a great quarterback, highlight reel, but you're going to have some growing pains. I'm not saying that New England can't win to go to the Super Bowl. I'm just saying I'm not sold that they're going to. Mm-hmm. I'm not sold on Indy. Denver's got a really good defense, but Bo Nix is no world beater. Chargers got flaws. We already talked about the Chiefs, the Ravens. So everything was there. Everything is there still for the Bills, and it kind of feels like they're blowing it this year, and that kind of makes it most frustrating. Well, then, by me asking you that, do you kind of a double question here. A, do you feel the same about this season with the Bills? And B, we mentioned Keon Coleman. Just quickly on our way out here, what are your thoughts with what's going on here? It almost feels like if he don't play this game on Sunday, I don't think it's salvageable anymore. I think it's over for the Keon Coleman era already. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Coleman, they've already, I feel like you're reading the tea leaves of McDermott's press conferences.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're we're kind of done with this kid. We'll see what they do, but I mean, it doesn't look to me like there's any clear path for him to get back in the lineup as it currently stands. Maybe it changes, but yeah, I think that's a fair point. If he's out this week, when realistically do you get him back in? Especially after such a bad offensive performance where it's okay, do you need to get this higher pick back in the lineup or consider him that much of a liability? As for the season, I think I generally agree. It's a down year in the AFC, and the Bills have probably had a golden opportunity to just run away with it. And to circle back to some of the things I said before, their personnel is just not good enough to do it. They don't have the weapons to be like a 14-win team in this year's AFC. They should be, but they got some bad money on the books now, and it makes it harder for them to sign players. And they obviously they've overinvested in the defense based on strategy. I get it, but I think it's a huge opportunity that's been squandered. Huge. That they're letting go by the wayside this year. And it's going to suck next year when KC's back back to being dominant, or Baltimore's back to being dominant, and then it's a dogfight in the playoffs. And one other thing I'd add very quickly, I've seen a few people mention it, and I hadn't really given it a ton of thought at first, but now that I've had a chance to kind of like chew on it, like it sucks that they're staring down potentially closing this stadium with the last home game in the regular season.
Yeah.
Like all the stories that have been written there, not just the fact that this is a bad year in the AFC and that they could have had relatively easy home field advantage, just from a fan perspective, to potentially be sending fans home after that last home game and saying, no, we're not going to play at home in the playoffs this year, guys. Sorry. It's just not in the cards. Like that blows, man. That's such a disappointment that they could last year in the stadium again. Like there's just so many great playoff moments, and they're going to have to go play on the road. I mean, the Super Bowl teams had they didn't have home field all the time, and I remember a certain AFC championship down in Miami that they went and whooped on Marino, on the road. But so there's some reason to still keep your hopes up if they can right the ship, despite their iffy road record. But just like the narrative, right? The narrative, the vibes, the fan service aspect of it. It's a real letdown to think that they may not have a single home playoff game.
To your point, that's a great way to end this too. To your point, it's look, the goal is to get to the playoffs and then to get to the Super Bowl. The team feels that way, and the fans ultimately do as well. But to your point, with Highmark Stadium, there's a good chance come week 18, the Bills have locked up a wild card, and that stadium's going to get closed out for the final time when Mitch Trubisky having 25 handoffs to Ray Davis and maybe throwing a couple passes to Elijah Moore, you know what I mean? And Jackson Hawes to end the Highmark Stadium era. That would kind of suck. I almost got better vibes about the Sabres right now a couple days before Thanksgiving than the Bills. That could change, though. Go beat the Steelers on Sunday on the road, and I'm going to feel a lot better about this team. So see how it plays out. Anyway, I'm going to keep in touch with you and definitely have you back on. I'm excited enough about the Sabres to want to watch them some more. If you're not following Chris on Twitter X, make sure you're doing that at 2ITB_Buffalo. I'll put a link to all that in the show notes as well. Instigator Podcast, Two in a Box blog, great stuff that Chris does covering the Sabres and hockey. Appreciate you, buddy, as always, man.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Matt Warren from SB Nation joins me. Some Bills positional analysis and much more coming up on the show tomorrow.